In the next 8 minutes, I'm about to tell you something that might completely change the way you see the world. Now, about a year ago, I started questioning everything, every choice, every preference. Why do I prefer buying this type of coffee over the other? Why do I choose to buy a specific t-shirt in a clothing store rather than one place just a few meters away? And why do I even bother scrolling to the next reel on my Instagram feed rather than pick up a book, start reading? Every choice I made seemed planned by something else. Allow me to illustrate this better with an example. Let's say you walk into a restaurant and you're starving. Right at the top of the menu, there's a steak priced at 5,000 rupees. And you think to yourself, there's no way I'm paying for that. And instead, you choose to order something that feels expensive but at the same time slightly more justifiable, like a bowl of pasta with some soup. Seems like an ordinary decision, but take a step back. What if that steak wasn't meant to be sold? What if it was just a decoy? Place says so suddenly everything else says like a buggy. That's not just a random pricing strategy. It's psychology at play. You weren't allowed to choose freely because you were nudged into doing it. Everyone, welcome to the world of behavioral economics. Allow me to introduce to you our first topic for the day, nudge theory. Established by Richard Thaler in 2008, this revolutionary breakthrough explores why we're often manipulated by the choices we make. In a nutshell, it's the core theory that various heuristics, which are mental shortcuts, combined with biases, influence our decisions on a day-to-day basis. These are thoroughly implemented by firms and governments throughout the world to influence the decisions that we make. An example is when banks in Britain provided the minimum payment option, where you repay the debt in the smallest amount possible. We anchor ourselves to the situation. The bank, however, receives a stable interest rate over a period of time. The result? Higher profits and higher revenues. This crucial aspect of our lives is influenced by parts of society we aren't even aware of. Another interesting characteristic about our society is that it's a haven of something known as choice architecture, where we frame a situation to the benefit of one party without the other party ever realizing. An example of some of these biases? Number one, anchoring. Contextually, it's the act of depending too much nearly on one piece of information, which then acts as the point of comparison for the decision we make. Just before, in our restaurant example, our brain chose to compare a widely expensive steak to a much more appealing and cheaper warm bowl of pasta. This, combined with something known as loss aversion, which is our mind's preference over avoiding losses rather than gaining benefits, results in us wanting to spend less money. We also have something known as cognitive ease. Like most things in the world, our brain too works on the demand and supply of energy. And it's just easier to compare the situation to a more model and more preferable output in our mind. This is also a form of something known as availability bias, where we compare a situation to the various archetypes and situations in our health. You probably made a decision like this before and just found it more agreeable to do it again. The reality is shocking, but companies around the world use this to secure the old or the ordinary consumer, maximize profits, and appeal to different population groups. Sounds both fascinating and scary, right? Although I have to say, something just doesn't feel right about it. I want to be in control of my own thoughts and my own decisions, but sadly, I can't. None of us really can. The answer to why lies in the tenets of our human trait. Now, it's important to understand that our brain isn't essentially in control of itself because, quite like two individuals that are hell bent on destroying each other, our brain too is a victim of duality between system 1 and system 2. The sibling rivalry that often results in the victory of, you guessed it, system 1. System 1 is responsible for all the involuntary decisions our body makes. But system 2, on the other hand, allocates attention to more effortful mental activities, such as complex computations. Now, many of you we choose to think it's system 2 that has more control, but as we just saw, our brain is full of glitches and bugs that are all in the control of system 1. System 1 generates a suggestion to system 2, which it all up and then turns it into an impression, a belief, and an idea that we think is in our control. In our restaurant example, System 1 made the impulse decision, and System 2, though active, is quite crazy. So it allowed the thought to move forward and become a decision that we thought was in our control. Why does our brain work this way? This division of labor is actually really efficient as it minimizes effort, optimizes performance, and uses energy and experiences from our past. However, whilst doing so, we fall into the trap of heuristics without ever realizing why. Now, I know it's the first talk, so let's move on to something that's a little more fun. Look at this question and think of the first word that comes into your head and hang on to that. All right, now that we've had a small moment to think, those of you who thought of soup, raise your hand. All right, now those of you who thought soap, raise your hand. Look around you for a little. Let's talk about what just happened. Most of you said soup as moments before I primed you with the word soup and a context to what hot food had already been discussed. Instead, if I had flashed in a bigger pot of soap, more of you might have said soap. This is the power of priming, a situation in which our exposure to one stimuli affects our response to many others. Our brain is like a network circuit of associations, and most of the times, the decisions we make are predetermined. Now, before I end this talk, I'd like to ask you my final and perhaps most disturbing question of all. Are we truly free in the thoughts and decisions we make? If the choices we make are constantly being influenced by our options, our environment, the words we hear, and the biases just hardwired into our brains, what does it really mean to have free will? Understanding these ideas doesn't imply we should be paranoid about every move we make. Instead, it should empower us to recognize what we're being primed, influenced, or nudged. The first step over retaining partial control is realizing you were never fully in control in the first place. So the next time you're in a restaurant, I'd like you to ask yourself, is this really a decision I'm making by my own free will? Because in this world of invisible crimes calling you at every move, awareness is the ultimate superpower. Maybe next time, rather than falling for the stake, you decide to yourself. Thank you.